take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, July 9th, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. We're so glad you could be here with us in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, the home to the best marijuana laws in the world. We're going to talk about that in hour two. I wrote up my Radical Rant column for High Times. By the way, check out hightimes.com, especially on Tuesdays and Fridays. Those are my bi-weekly column dates at hightimes.com. And the next column is entitled 10 Reasons Why Oregon Has the World's Best Marijuana Legalization. And if you listened to my presentation yesterday that I gave at the Oregon Marijuana Summit in downtown Portland at the World Trade Center, yes, we still have a World Trade Center. If you heard that, you got most of these 10 reasons, but I distilled it down to just one article. So I'm going to give that in hour two. You can take a listen to that and learn why Oregon has the world's best marijuana legalization. But coming up in hour one, speaking of that seminar, that summit that took place with some of the finest legal minds, it was basically a lawyers' summit to get them up to date on the criminal and business law as it is now in the state of Oregon concerning cannabis. And so with me on the first opening panel at 9 a.m. yesterday was Representative Ann Leininger from the Measure 91 Joint Implementation Committee. She was the co-vice chair, I believe. And she is from the Rogue River Valley, southern Oregon, member of a 6th-generation family that's grown up down there. So she knows quite well how marijuana growing is entrenched within that community and that culture down there. And it was a delight to listen to her speak about her experiences on the legislative committee, some of the roadblocks they ran against, some of the decisions they had to make. So stay tuned for our second half hour. I'll give you the full presentation of Representative Ann Leininger at the Oregon Legalization Summit that took place on the legislative amendments that we have to Measure 91. But also coming up on the show today, we're going to do another Hemp Day Hump Day update, kind of a bonus. We don't get any Doug Fine with this one, but I was just checking out all of the news stories lately on hemp and specifically on hempcrete. So I'm going to give you a hempcrete update when we get to our update. That'll take the place of our drug war data mine today. Also on the show in Behind the Headlines. Oh my gosh. So there's some good coming out of Congress, the United States Congress up on Capitol Hill, some good coming out of the Senate today. We'll tell you about that. But also on the House side, the U.S. Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives is so reefer mad, they can't even sub-schedule marijuana. What's that? Sub-schedule? You've heard reschedule. You've heard deschedule. What the hell is sub-schedule? That's what I was wondering. So we'll tell you all about that coming up in Behind the Headlines. But first, the 420 radio news and in the headlines today. Can you fly out a PDX with weed? In some circumstances, yes. We got a poll on the idea of marijuana social clubs in Denver. The pot smoking church in Indiana is suing the state for their religious rights. King County, Washington's cracking down on unlicensed medical marijuana dispensaries. A Montana man has an interesting plan for legalizing marijuana in that state. New Mexico's Court of Appeals made an important ruling on compensating medical marijuana patients who are injured, and a special note about tomorrow, 7/10 Dab Day, and live. Well, we'll just tell you about it when we get there. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana legalization radio.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Norman. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
Funky Roller Ring.
What's happening, Groovy Cats? This is your Funk Master of Ceremonies, Big Daddy, and I want you to join me every Thursday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here at the Funky Roller Ring. Your home of soul, funk, and disco, baby.
Funky-licious.
There's always a party at the Funky Roller Ring.
420 Radio is brought to you by Sacred Serum, who is focused on creating elegant and sophisticated cannabis solutions through its line of dispensers and vaporizers that come preloaded with the world's finest cannabis concentrate. Sacred Serum's concentrate is made on pharmaceutical-grade supercritical CO2 extraction machines that use absolutely no butane or other toxic chemicals. The Vesica, the company's innovative new way to dab and frost, is now available in dispensaries across California. Sacred Serum, elegance and sophistication concentrated.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Russ Belville with your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Thursday, July 9th, 2015. Passengers at Oregon's Portland International Airport can legally board airplanes with up to an ounce of marijuana for in-state flights, keeping with the state's new law that legalizes recreational marijuana. Airport officials said the Transportation Security Administration is not focused on finding marijuana, but rather keeping up with security and safety issues. If a TSA agent finds a passenger with marijuana, the local police will be notified to ensure it is within the legal weight limit, up to an ounce, the passenger is of legal age to carry the drug, 21, and the boarding pass indicates an in-state flight. If everything checks out, the passenger is free to travel. If a passenger does not meet the legal requirements, the traveler will be given the option to store the marijuana in a safe place, like a car, give it to someone over age 21 who is not traveling, or surrender it to law enforcement to be destroyed. A new poll suggests that the campaign for marijuana social clubs in Denver is off to a positive start, with 56% of those surveyed saying they'd back the proposal, with just 40% opposed. But equally interesting is another tidbit from the survey, one that showed respondents feel alcohol use is riskier than marijuana consumption by a staggering 4-to-1 margin. Those who see alcohol use as a bigger issue far outnumbered folks who feel the same about cannabis. The breakdown, 55% versus 13%. With 26% maintaining that alcohol and marijuana use causes about the same number of problems, and 6% uncertain. A pot-smoking church sued the city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana on Wednesday, claiming laws against possession and use of marijuana infringe on its religious beliefs. The First Church of Cannabis, formed as a test of Indiana's new religious objections law, filed its lawsuit in Marion County Circuit Court, Indianapolis, naming multiple defendants, including Governor Mike Pence and state and local law enforcement officers. The lawsuit claims church members believe marijuana is a sacrament. The lawsuit says Indiana laws that make possession of marijuana or visiting a place where it is used a punishable offense place a burden on the church's exercise of religion, violating the state and U.S. constitutions. King County's top two law enforcers announced a crackdown Wednesday on medical marijuana dispensaries in unincorporated parts of the county, starting in White Center, which they said has at least 6 such storefronts close together. Signaling a sharp turn in county policy, prosecuting attorney Dan Satterberg and Sheriff John Urquhart said such businesses are now illegal under a new state law that attempts to bring medical marijuana into the state's licensed recreational shops. Satterberg said 15 dispensaries now operating in unincorporated King County are undermining Washington's groundbreaking legal pot system. While revealing their plans at a sidewalk news conference, Satterberg and Urquhart were interrupted by accusations and questions from angry patients. One complaint was that the state hasn't yet created rules to bring medical products into the license system, so why clamp down before then? A Montana man proposed a ballot measure this week to legalize recreational marijuana for adults 21 and older in Montana. Anthony Variano submitted proposed language that would amend the state constitution to regulate pot and tax it as an industry, as well as allow the purchase and possession of limited amounts. It would also require that the first $40 million in revenue raised annually in taxes go toward public schools. Because it would amend the Constitution, Veriano needs to collect nearly 50,000 signatures to get the initiative on next year's ballot, which he claims he will do by biking across the state of Montana. Once again, the New Mexico State Court of Appeals has ruled that a patient in the state's medical cannabis program who was injured on the job must be reimbursed by an employer for the expense of marijuana used for treatment. It's the third time since May 2014 that the appeals court has ruled in favor of a medical marijuana patient in a workers' compensation claim. Tomorrow is July 10th, or 7/10, the day known as Dab Day to cannabis extract aficionados. In celebration, the Russ Belville Show and the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour will stream live at 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. respectively for 2 hours each from the Fresh Buds PDX dispensary at 110 Southeast Main Street in Portland, Oregon. Swing on by for specials from Fresh Buds and prizes from 420 Radio and Portland Normal. Tomorrow, 7/10, the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour and the Russ Belville Show live on 420radio.org. This has been your 420 Radio News for Thursday, July 9th, 2015. I'm Russ Belville. 420 Radio, the activist radio station. Oregon has joined Washington and Colorado in legalizing marijuana. We're Portland Normal, the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws chapter in Portland, Oregon. Join us as we celebrate the launch of an exciting new era in marijuana freedom in Oregon. Our job has just begun. Powerful interests want to white out the most important portions of Oregon's legalization law. By joining Portland Normal, you add your voice to the thousands who voted for Measure 91 and want it to be implemented as written. The people have spoken. Now it is time for the legislature to obey the will of the people. Find out more about Portland Normal at portlandnormal.org. Attend our monthly membership meetings on the fourth Saturday of the month. See our website for more details. Portland Normal, ensuring responsible adult marijuana consumers are afforded the same rights, privileges, and responsibilities as beer drinkers. Tokers, there's no good reason to get your dog stoned. While it might not harm them physically, imagine being a dog who already begs for treats all day, and then imagine that dog having the munchies. Not cool. The fingerboard extension has fretted instruments to enhance your creativity. It has new and used guitars and banjos from beginning to high class. The fingerboard extension has National Resophonic, Husson Dalton, Larrabee, Heritage and Recording King guitars, and Mike Ramsey, Wildwood, Gold Tone and Recording King banjos. The fingerboard extension also has drum stuff, used gear, and parts. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension, downtown Corvallis, Oregon at 120 Northwest 2nd, or check out the inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com and reverb.com. Today we're taking a look at a Congress that's so reefer mad they can't even subschedule marijuana for research. And I know you're saying, what, subschedule? What does that mean? I didn't even know until I read the story. Before we get to it, though, let's announce some of the good news, because there is bipartisan support now for fixing the marijuana banking issue. This was actually another one of the laws passed in Oregon, was a Senate joint memorial or some sort of resolution, I think it was, where the Senate and the House of the state of Oregon called upon the federal government to solve the banking and tax issues for Oregon's newly legalized businesses. So there's a lot of support for that. And on Thursday, a bipartisan group of senators introduced the banking bill. This is the senators from Oregon and Colorado, a bill that would prohibit the federal government from penalizing banks that work with marijuana businesses. Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, GOP senator, says the landscape around legal marijuana is insane. Quote, if you're an employee or a store owner, you can't put money in the bank. But if you're a municipality collecting tax, you can collect the tax and you can put it in the bank and you can spend it. This is insane. The bill, he says, solves a public safety issue. It clarifies a regulatory nightmare, and it clears up a pretty blatant hypocrisy, end quote. There's another bill in the Senate from Rand Paul, Cory Booker, and Kirsten Gillibrand that would legalize marijuana in the states that have approved it, but the Senate's old guard have pretty much blocked it, preventing it from getting out of committees and such. But Orrin Hatch, one of those old guard Republican senators from Utah, is in support of a bipartisan bill that would exclude cannabidiol from the definition of marijuana. I mean, just slowly creeping forward, some of these people are, but he's on board with this. And of course, Utah was the first state to pass a CBD-only law for childhood epileptics. Now, Senator Gardner says, quote, does it have a chance? I think there's a lot of work that has to be done to give it that chance, but I also think that in 10 years, most every other state in the country is going to be facing this question. People are coming on board and people are starting to realize we have a policy that's kind of out of step. Well, I like the idea that a Republican senator from Colorado thinks most every other state in the country is going to have to face legalization issues in the next 10 years. That's good news. So now that we've got the good news out of the way, let's go to the bad news, which is in the other side of Capitol Hill. The House Republicans say no to allowing federal studies of medical marijuana. This is in the Washington Post. And of course, medical marijuana is available in almost half of the U.S. now. And we've got 4 states where it's completely legal. But they killed a bill. Now, this was a bipartisan bill. They killed this bill that would have reclassified marijuana so that national laboratories could conduct credible research on its safety and efficacy as a medical treatment. It would have had the National Institutes of Health and the Drug Enforcement Administration working together to study marijuana for cancer, epilepsy, glaucoma, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And yet, they killed it. They killed this bill. And it's interesting, the people who were for it and against it, because the people who were for it came from either sides of the issue when it comes to medical marijuana. One of the co-sponsors was Maryland Representative Andy Harris. Now, Andy Harris is a doctor. He's an MD, a real doctor, right? An MD. And he was the guy who kept trying to stop legalization in Washington, D.C., because you know how Congress can override Washington, D.C. on things, right? He's the guy who's been the number one guy blocking legalization in Washington, D.C., yet he co-sponsored this measure that would have the NIH and DEA working together to study medical marijuana. He said, quote, we need science to clearly determine whether marijuana has medicinal benefits, and if so, what is the best way to gain those benefits, end quote. Now, this guy, Andy Harris, in the past, he's been anti-medical marijuana too. He thinks it's bullshit, for the most part. So he wants this research to back him up. He's trying to get these studies done so that once and for all he can say, see, medical marijuana is a sham. And then there's another guy who's another Republican, H. Morgan Griffith of Virginia. And he's pleading for it for different reasons. He's on the other side. He says, quote, we let doctors use heroin derivatives, barbiturates, and all kinds of nasty stuff that I wouldn't want people to use recreationally. Why not study marijuana? Andy Harris doesn't think the research will show anything positive, but I do. And both of us feel willing to take the risk, do the research, and let us use evidence to make decisions. This amendment would have answered the question one way or the other. I think it would have shown it is a valuable medical substance, but now we don't have the evidence. End quote. And of course, that's always been the way they've wanted to keep it, right? Keep saying it's bad because it's illegal because it's dangerous because it's bad. There's no evidence it's any good for everything. Well, we've seen it's really good for all these other things. Yeah, but you don't have any evidence. Well, you won't let us study it. See, because it's bad and it's dangerous. Like, jeez. And to this end, Earl Blumenauer, my congressman, and Sam Farr in this amendment, so the Democrats on this amendment, Sam Farr from California, this wasn't even about rescheduling marijuana down to Schedule 2 or Schedule 3 or something where you could always research. No, they were going to create a subclassification in Schedule 1 called Schedule 1R. Like a little asterisk for marijuana. Schedule 1R, okay, go ahead and study it. And then if it was found to no longer be appropriate, then they could be rescheduled further out of Schedule 1R, and they couldn't pass that.
Unbelievable.
Thank you, Liebermater. That was perfect. It's exactly unbelievable, Simon Cowell. They couldn't even sub-schedule marijuana. Wasn't even going to take it out of Schedule 1. It's still Schedule 1. We can still put people in prison for it, but by God, can't we at least study it? Nope, can't study it. It's illegal because it's bad. It's bad because it's illegal.
Drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs. If you do them, you're bad because drugs are bad, okay?
Radio, the home of marijuana experts. This is Radical Russ encouraging you to take a look at the Weed Blog every day. Johnny Green and the staff at the Weed Blog are on top of all the latest developments in the fight to end marijuana prohibition nationwide. You can even get the Weed Blog on your smartphone by installing the Weed Blog app for iPhone and Android. If it's about weed, it's on the Weed Blog, including my original writing. So don't delay, read the Weed Blog today. Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz. Marijuana legalization also ushers in the return of the American hemp industry. Get the latest news from the author of Hempbound and Too High to Fail, Doug Fine, in our Hemp Day Hump Day update. Well, folks, it isn't Hemp Day, and Doug Fine is not here, but I had a couple of stories about hemp that I didn't get to when I was speaking with Doug yesterday, and I just couldn't let them sit any longer. I'm just so excited because I'm looking over at my amplifier and all my equipment, and on top of that is my little brick of hempcrete. I still have this little brick of hempcrete. Made it some months ago, and it's dried and cured now, and it's a nice solid block of hempcrete. And one of the cool things about the block of hempcrete, aside from getting to make it, is how amazingly pest resistant and hydrostatic and hygrostatic. It's like it breathes humidity. It's beyond my ability to explain it sometimes, but it's this amazing substance. And it's just been frustrating that it's not gotten the attention that it deserves, at least here in the United States. It's gone crazy in Europe. They've been building it for a while now, decades. They've been building it in Europe because Europe has legal hemp fields. Hempcrete is this great product that if your hemp is locally sourced, it's carbon negative. That's right. Growing the hemp and it's sucking the carbon dioxide out of the air and then processing it with the lime. And then when that lime and hemp mix is drying and curing, all of that actually takes more carbon dioxide out of the air than the energy that is produced in all the making of the hempcrete itself. Right? So it's a carbon negative building material that gets better and stronger with age, resists rot and mildew. And oh my God, what a great thing it would be here for the Pacific Northwest where we have so much moisture. And one of the better parts about it as well is brought up here in a Time magazine article, time.com, in their money section. And this came out just today, or yesterday, Wednesday. The new green building trend is bricks of cannabis. Really? Right, like you and I have been talking about this for years now, and anybody with any passing knowledge of marijuana has understood there's such thing as hemp building materials. But now, Time magazine and the mainstream are finally really, what? You can do stuff other than smoke it? Here's the short article by Brad Tuttle in Time yesterday. Builders are using cannabis not in joints, but between joists. The jokes about homes going up in smoke are inevitable, but the truth is that one of the reasons the cannabis-based building material called hempcrete is gaining acceptance in home construction is that it's entirely fireproof. That's right. I got my little brick of hempcrete here, and if I had my little torch, I could put the torch right up against the hempcrete and just blast it, full blast for 10 minutes. The damn brick would never catch fire. In fact, there would be just a little tiny hole, little score of ash right where the torch would touch, and that would be it. This stuff's entirely fireproof. Now, it's made with the hurd of cannabis stalks. They kind of feel, when you see the hurd, it's kind of like balsa wood chips. You know, the balsa wood you'd make for like little airplanes and stuff. It feels like that kind of. And then you combine it with lime and water, and it's a natural insulation. It's flexible, breathable, and fireproof. And flexible is important when we talk about places in earthquake zones like we are here on the Pacific coast, that it has give to it. Now, it's not structurally strong enough to be a building material by itself. You still need lumber, right, for your or steel, whatever you're going to make your frame out of. But it does have enough strength within it to allow you to space the joists farther apart, meaning you use less lumber. Now, that's subject to your local building code. Some places you have to build it with the joists X number of inches apart. But some places have also lobbied to get those things changed for hempcrete when they show them the evidence of the structural integrity of the product. And of course, hempcrete is like hemp, right? It's not smokable. The whole thing is not ever going to get anyone high, even the raw balsa chips. But of course, Time magazine had to point that out, saying, there's no need to worry about teenage hooligans ripping out your insulation to smoke it. Yeah, okay, duh, no kidding. Now, the article this is Wednesday's article, is referencing a Monday article, July 6th, in the region area, the region section of the New York Times, entitled Cannabis Construction, Entrepreneurs Using Hemp for Home Building. And it talks about James Savage, who is a Wall Street analyst in Central Park West, and he was seeing the news on Hurricane Katrina and all the flooded homes and all the mold, the earthquake in Haiti and all these crushed homes, and he decided to form a hempcrete business. He said, quote, who knew hemp would be the answer to what we were looking for, end quote. And he started a company to create building materials derived from cannabis. He's starting with his own first project, an 1850s farmhouse that he's going to get rebuilt. And he's continuing on to build hempcrete houses. He says it's the difference between a wolf and a poodle, comparing the difference between cannabis and hemp. Same species, totally different animal. And he says he smoked pot when he was young, but it's just something that he's now more interested in the building material aspects of this. And it's just amazing. $600 million of hemp that Canada shipped to American businesses last year. That should be American jobs right now. 420 Radio, fighting prohibition since 2012. At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out lushledlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Reforming America's marijuana prohibition laws takes education, lobbying, and voting. From Washington, D.C. to your state capital to your city hall, marijuana law reform involves all levels of civic life. Learn how you can make your impact with elected officials as we take a look at our government at work. Yesterday at the World Trade Center in Portland, Oregon, I was on a panel with Representative Ann Leininger from Southern Oregon. She was on the Measure 91 Joint Implementation Committee, and she spoke about the amendments to marijuana legalization.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for letting me join you here today. I'm Ann Leininger, and I've had the pleasure and the really interesting experience in the last 6 months to be co-chairing the legislature's committee on implementing legal marijuana in Oregon. I think to help frame my remarks, I'd like to give you some background on me. I'm a transactional attorney by training. I worked as general counsel for Oregon Ironworks for a couple of years, worked representing developers of affordable housing, and worked for the Meyer Memorial Trust, which is a foundation that serves Oregon and Southwest Washington, making debt and equity investments and structuring and underwriting investments in real estate development projects largely that have a community benefit purpose. So I bring some, and I'm a former litigator with the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, so I bring some interest in environmental issues, project issues, and small business issues. I also am from Southern Oregon, which is affectionately known by many as the Emerald Triangle. I grew up in Ashland, and my family has lived in Southern Oregon for 6 generations. So we are long time, early in Rogue Valley people who unfortunately bought less land than you would ideally have had in retrospect. But my frame of reference is one of having grown up in like a West Berlin of progressivism within the Rogue Valley in Jackson County, Southern Oregon, which is not as progressive, right? But my family had a rock crushing business, which is also not progressive, but important. It's a natural resource extraction economy there in Southern Oregon, right? And it has been gravely affected by the change in the timber economy, which has significantly winnowed down. As we understand, we have to have more environmental protection regulation, and a lot of people in that part of our state and around our state have been trying to figure out, what do we do next? What is the next step for people who are used to making a living from the land in a natural resource extraction way as we become more focused on environmental sustainability? There are ever increasing environmental protection regulations that affect what we do on our land, and there are a lot of people who need to make a living. So that is the framework that I bring to this work, and I worked on the Measure 91 campaign. So I was an active and public supporter, both because I think we need to find good ways for people all around our state, and particularly in some of our natural resource dependent parts of the state, who are trying to figure out where economic opportunity lies next, to have good jobs. And also because I am moved profoundly by concerns about disparate impact of law enforcement particularly on people of color. A friend of mine wrote a book called The New Jim Crow, right? Some of you have read that, about how people of color have been so disproportionately incarcerated and affected by our war on drugs that has in fact not solved or maybe even exacerbated the problem that we have with controlled substances in the country. So that's what I bring. And I also bring this PowerPoint, which I will now attempt to use. Hey, all right, I'm going to talk about the economic, cultural, legal context. This chart shows that that the timber industry, once a really major economic power in Oregon, now accounts for less than 2% of the GDP in Oregon. And an interesting contrast is, as we've received a lot of testimony in the Measure 91 committee, that the relative economic power of these two sectors is something really to think about. I read recently a statistic that said the direct economic impact from timber at this point in our state is about $2 billion annually, direct economic impact. And I have heard testimony, you may have been there for this testimony, that the marijuana sector right now And it's not even a traded sector, officially a traded sector market, and more people will perhaps get involved with it as it's legal, is already $1 billion a year sector. And fascinatingly, the part of the state that is most well suited for outdoor growing in any event is exactly the part of the state that has been most affected by the transition from the timber economy. So I find that to be a really interesting symmetry. So this is a picture of something from Ashland, just to note that we're not only in an economic transition, an economic pivot point, but if you look at the politics of rural Oregon, and as a legislator and someone from that part of the state originally, though I now live in Lake Oswego, I represent Lake Oswego in Southwest Portland. If you look at the politics of Oregon, that area has traditionally, or has since the 80s, been strongly represented by Republican legislators, which is fine, and there's room for a wide range of views in our state. I respect that. But it'll be interesting to see what happens as the economic power of Southern Oregon shifts somewhat from the old school timber economy to this as an important emerging source of economic and perhaps also political power. It's generally different people, right, who are in the one industry and in the other industry. And when I went to Williams, Oregon recently, has anyone here been to Williams? It's a real sort of prime spot for outdoor cultivation in Southern Oregon. There are a whole lot of people there who talk about how they get their food at the Ashland Food Co-op and how they, I think it's just a different set of political affinities and interests, and it'll be very interesting as economic power diversifies in that region to see what's going to happen in a political context as well. I think that the Ashland way of being is going to, some of the Ashland preferences are going to be more apparent in other parts of Southern Oregon too. So it's important to know that as we move toward legalization or move into legalization after this July 1st, one of the important frameworks that we have to conduct our conduct within is that of the Cole Memo. Who here knows the Cole Memo? All right, so that is a piece of guidance that the Department of Justice, US DOJ, issued in 2013, essentially saying that if you adhere to these 8 or so strictures about how you run marijuana legalization in your state, we will not come in with the muscle of the DEA and shut you down or arrest people. And those parameters are things like, are you keeping marijuana out of the hands of children? Are you taking steps reasonably to eliminate gang activity and violence? Are you keeping marijuana off public lands? In Southern Oregon, grows on public lands have been a really big problem and created safety problems for people who want to use our public lands. Are you keeping it off of federal property? A variety of things. I think I included the Cole Memo in the meeting materials, but as we are working as a legislature to support an orderly rollout of Measure 91 and successful continuation of the medical marijuana program, one of the things that was really emphasized to us is the need to take reasonable steps to try to prevent diversion or leakage into the gray market of product that may be grown legally, but in the medical context, I think we all recognize that a lot of people have a lot more product than they give to patients, even if they're really altruistic, good-hearted people who are doing right by patients, and how do we help make sure that that doesn't get diverted into the gray market? So that's animated a fair amount of our work in terms of implementing legalization. You know that in 1998, Oregon voters decided to allow medical marijuana. And in allowing medical marijuana, Oregon has joined 23 other states that allow medical marijuana. And it's been a robust and very successful program that the legislature has, as far as I can tell, tweaked and evolved quite a bit over the last 10, 12 years. Of course, the Measure 91 campaign was successful, and even though it went in 2014, November 2014, and it won with 56% of the votes cast, a lot of people thought maybe that wasn't going to work, right? Because it was brought to the ballot not in a presidential year, but There was tremendous teamwork. Who here was involved with the Measure 91 campaign? All right, nice work. And it's an exciting transition for our state. So now we join 4 states and the District of Columbia as states that allow legal adult use marijuana. And in 2016, we expect at least 5 other states, including California, Massachusetts, California, Massachusetts, Nevada, possibly Maine, and one other, anyone, are going to have these measures on the ballot also. And so, we are definitely heading into a time when legal, responsibly used adult use marijuana is going to be legal across the country. And when that happens, the state legislature wants to make sure that Oregon businesses have an opportunity to be at the forefront of the new traded sector opportunity. It's already $1 billion annual business, and Oregon is perfectly situated to be a prime producer in this new market. And so we've been working to create a legal framework that will let legal cannabis businesses take a place alongside artisan food and wine and beer production businesses in a new wave of successful Oregon entrepreneurs that operate on sustainability, with an eye towards sustainability and local production, and often progressive values that I care about, like treating workers well. And you'll be interested to know United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, played an active role in the campaign. This gentleman here might know that. They played an active role in the campaign because they care about workers having good jobs with health insurance and other benefits and being treated well and making a decent salary. And from what I understand, they've entered into one agreement already with an integrated cannabis business that has grow, distribution, and retail sites in the medical space that's going to really give voice to a lot of those values. So it's kind of an opportunity for us to create a really exciting new sector that operates with the values that a lot of us share, a lot of the cannabis entrepreneurs share, that I think align very much with the core values of Oregon. So it's really extremely exciting in that way. So our agenda through the session has been to take steps necessary as to the medical marijuana program to help it operate in a strong way, to continue operating, to keep patients access to medicine, and to try to deal with diversion issues. Because if we want the adult use retail market to succeed, we have to make sure that it's not being significantly undercut by a really flourishing gray market. And so within the medical space, we've taken a couple of steps. We've implemented a more robust tracking system, and this is in House Bill 3400 that the legislation is in. And let me just tell you, we have 5 key pieces of legislation that have passed through both chambers, passed out of the Measure 91 committee unanimously. It's a very broad spectrum of bipartisan, people in that committee, but we unanimously endorsed House Bill 3400, which is the medical adjustments and the implementation of Measure 91, some adjustments around Measure 91. House Bill 2041, which moves the point of taxation from point of harvest to point of sale and allows local governments that allow all legal kinds of marijuana in their jurisdiction to invite its community to vote on whether they also want to impose a 3% local option sales tax. And then we have Senate Bill 460, which enables legal cannabis to be sold, adult use cannabis to be sold from medical dispensaries starting October 1st, if the local jurisdiction does not prohibit it by ordinance, and if the dispensary wants to do it. And that would start being taxed as of January 1, because Department of Revenue fundamentally just can't get a whole taxation system up and running between now and October 1, but they could by January 1, so that would give people a few months of adult use tax-free purchasing. Senate Bill 844, which gives medical patients a few additional rights and opportunities. One, if you're in hospice, it expressly allows someone other than your caregiver to administer medical marijuana if you wish that to happen, and if the hospice provider is comfortable doing that. And if you are seeking an organ transplant, you can't per se be taken off the organ donor list because you use medical marijuana. That's part of this. Another piece of this is a task force on medical research and identifying how we can overcome some of the structural barriers, namely federal dollars can't be used to support cannabis research right now. So how do we overcome those structural barriers, and how do we help necessary and useful cannabis medical research move forward? I think a lot of us agree that we want to know more about what the helpful properties are. We want to know more about any harmful issues that we need to be aware of. There is a strong feeling within the public safety community that we want to understand a little bit more about how we can reasonably deal with driving while intoxicated issues. And that meets up against the strong desire by many of us to prevent unduly intrusive ways of detecting cannabis in the system. But my favorite part of Senate Bill 844, and this is a theme that I think my colleague on the panel will also be talking about, is expungement opportunities. So if you care about the fact that the people of color are roughly 2 times more likely to be in trouble with the law for marijuana offenses, even though people of all backgrounds use and break those rules at roughly the same rate, then you have to care about disparate impacts. And you have to care about the fact that a lot of people got in big trouble, and it's really stigmatizing to have criminal offenses on your record for conduct that's no longer illegal. So a key piece of the work that we've been doing is making sure that if you may have violated a law related to cannabis in the past, and it's no longer illegal, or we've come to understand that it shouldn't be illegal, you shouldn't wear a lead weight around your ankle for the whole rest of your life because you did that at an earlier time in our country's history. I mean, we are evolving as a country socially in a whole bunch of ways, right? The marriage equality transitions that we've all embraced show that, a number of other things too. And so Senate Bill 844 enables people who are under age 21, who've had a marijuana-related offense, to have that expunged within 1 year after completion of any penalty, as long as they don't have subsequent stuff that they're getting in trouble for. And so that creates a 1-year expungement waiting period instead of the 5-year that otherwise applied. In Senate Bill, or House Bill 3400, you'll see that we reclassified a whole bunch of cannabis-related crimes down from Class A felonies, Class B felonies, to misdemeanors, or in some instances Class C felonies, which is the smallest kind of felony. And in many instances we reduced the waiting period for expungement down to 3 years from 10 years. So I personally feel like that's a really important thing. And fundamentally, the fact that we were able to get this committee of legislators that includes, the Senate minority leader, who's fabulously smart and charismatic, but much further to the right than I am on environmental issues, Jeff Cruz from Roseburg, Peter Buckley, who's very progressive, Floyd Przonski, who's very progressive, and everyone in between to unanimously support bills that simultaneously said things like sales tax, crime reduction, and marijuana. Who would have thought 3 years ago, who would have thought that we could get that chorus of people unanimously embracing this legislation? It shows the really significant cultural change that we're going through. So that's a bit of a snapshot on changes we've made in the medical marijuana framework. Enhanced tracking, efforts to protect existing dispensaries, some plant limits, but with grandfathering provisions in, so that if you've grown, most everyone that we identify grows under 100 plants right now, because I guess federal law kicks you into a more significant penalty category if you go above 100 plants. So 96 plants was the ceiling that we identified. We made some changes so you can lawfully possess what you've grown lawfully, which is really significant, because it used to be the case that you could get in big trouble the moment after you harvest, because suddenly you were in violation of the law, even if you were lawfully growing with cards for a certain number of patients. And we've tried to make the tracking system not too onerous, because we want to make sure that the mom and pop growers, the small growers who may be doing this work right now. And there's an influx of much more sophisticated, well-capitalized businesses coming in, and that's part of the business process. But we want to make sure that we don't make compliance with some more rigorous rules so onerous and so costly that businesses that want to come in to a regulated system just can't do it because they don't have the money, and it's an extremely alienating level of regulation. Now, whether we hit the sweet spot on that is to be determined, but we made a conscious effort to make the medical program one that is prudently regulated but not excessively regulated, such that it pushes people away from wanting to comply. Anybody watch Schoolhouse Rock when you were little, or is that just me? Yeah, thank you. So implementing Measure 91, we again, we needed to define some things about the kind of tracking system that we would have. We needed to define the kinds of licenses and certifications. Like, have you heard of the Immaculate Conception Program? I mean, I guess everyone here has heard of Immaculate Conception. And it's a head scratcher, right? So in the legal cannabis sector, there's also an Immaculate Conception problem, because as of July 1, you can grow 4 plants, right, at your house, and you can receive gifts of marijuana, but you can't get the seeds and starts yourself legally in order to produce it at your house. And so we have some problems associated with where you get the stuff to lawfully exercise your rights under this new law. So we have certifications that allow businesses to sell seeds and starts, and kind of a range of things that you'd want to do. We of course moved tax from point of harvest to point of sale, which can also be said as sales tax, which is, it's a big cultural shift. It's almost like we said, and you shall pump your own gas. We did not say that, because that would have been crazy town, right? But we did implement, with the unanimous support of the sector, a sales tax for cannabis taxation, because people all just said it will be way more efficient. We're trying to run successful businesses here. It'll be much more efficient to do it in this way, and also it'll be much better for concentrate and edibles producers, because if you tax at point of harvest and people are making products that involve really intense concentrations of cannabis, then that would have rocketed the price of those products by incorporating in the taxation at the point of harvest to an unattainably high place. So we got input from people that it would be much better from the industry's perspective to do point of sale. The 3% local tax, that's a change from Measure 91. And as someone who worked on the campaign, I was pretty reluctant at the outset to support any changes to Measure 91, but after a bunch of debates and negotiations, it seemed clear we needed to do it. Thank you. Essentially, we have a cultural problem. We have a cultural issue, and that is not every part of Oregon is as comfortable with the idea of cannabis legalization as I am, or as the people I went to high school with in Ashland are. But we all now are under the same state law. And so after just about fracturing the committee over whether we would allow local opt-outs without a vote of the people, because Measure 91 allows local communities to opt out on a vote of residents, we came to a conclusion that communities that voted really significantly against Measure 91, where it's pretty much likely that the voters would choose to opt out, they may opt out through action of their local elected officials. If 55% or more of the community voted against Measure 91, then local officials may opt out on behalf of the community. Otherwise, you have to have a vote of the people. That captures a huge amount of the state, but not some of Eastern Oregon. So we decided to add a sweetener. And that is, if you allow every type of legal marijuana business, and don't prohibit any of the types of legal marijuana businesses, though you may have time, place, and manner regulation, which is fully appropriate in my opinion, Then you may also invite your voters to weigh in on whether they'd like to have a local option 3% sales tax. And I think that may help some communities that are a little bit on the fence decide that they will try this new thing, which for some communities is scary and alien, and we're moving into a new era, and it's not 100% pretty, but it's a compromise that enabled us to move forward and get unanimous support for a lot of other good things. So I think that it was a good idea in the end. Some of the universally relevant issues we've been working on are lab testing and product contamination testing and sort of potency testing, so that when consumers buy a product, they know exactly what's in it and they know how strong the product is going to be. There are land use issues that I think you're going to talk about later on. You know that getting an accessory dwelling on EFU land is typically contingent on having $80,000 a year in farm revenue from that land. And now that we are introducing legal cannabis as a crop, raises important issues that some of the pro-conservation, the environmental protection, farm use conservation people really care about, in terms of, are we going to be opening up after Measure 49 and the Measure 37 and all that land use battle? Have we just created a new situation in which we're going to have tons of accessory dwellings on farmland, and then people are going to stop using it as farmland, and we're just going to have a whole bunch of little ranchettes? That's a big issue for us to be dealing with in the future. I'm going to give you 3 issues we're going to deal with in the future, and then I'm going to stop. Over the interim, we're going to have a work group on environmental impacts from this new sector, things like energy impacts, energy consumption, and how we can lawfully incentivize energy efficiency, because cannabis growing indoor is a very energy intensive activity. Water use and how this new sector is affecting water supply or water use in the agricultural sector, and pesticide use. I think you may have seen that there, in some products, are high pesticide concentrations, and do we want to create best practices as a sector on how we use pesticides, especially because it's off-label, right? Since it's a Schedule I controlled substance, federal pesticide laws don't permit pesticide use on cannabis crops. So how do we do this? So there's environmental protection work, there's work around further crime reclassification and expungement. There's work on the issue of how legalization is affecting young people. We're going to create a student advisory council on drug policy and youth. And the idea is going to be, let's have high school students from around the state let us know how legalization is affecting their world. Are they noticing a significant increase in the presence of cannabis and other drugs on campus? Are they noticing no increase? Are they getting information, which we've directed to have happen, about how cannabis may be legal for adults, but that doesn't make it appropriate for young people? You know, how is that working? We know that we've got a lot of evolution to do, probably some of the things that we implemented in these 5 pieces of legislation, the last of which was, hey, Congress, please solve the banking problem, because it's nuts to have legal businesses that have to walk around with tens of thousands of dollars in duffel bags. It's dangerous for employees. It's bad for business. Let's solve that. We may have to make changes. We will have to make changes. We acted in good faith. There's a lot of goodwill, I think, among people on our committee and within the stakeholder community who know we were trying really hard to get it right. I'm sure we didn't get it all right, but I think that we have the goodwill, the understanding this is important, and the humility to come back and do some do-overs. So like the medical program, we'll probably be redoing this for many years, but with your help, hopefully we can move this into a really positive space for Oregon and create some great results.
That's Representative Ann Leininger from Southern Oregon, the Ashland area. I was on the panel with her yesterday at the World Trade Center Summit on marijuana legalization in Oregon. Speaking of that, I'll give you the top 10 reasons why Oregon's marijuana legalization is the best in the world. That's coming up here in hour 2. Plus, we'll take your calls toll free at 84-420-RADIO. That's 844-207-2346. And also, if you missed the news, we're going to be coming to you live from Fresh Buds PDX at 110 Southeast Main Street tomorrow for the Russ Belville Show, and tomorrow night for the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour, and by internet we'll have Timmy Harris there too for the Big Daddy Fink's Funky Roller Rink. Talk more about it next hour, but until now, it's all the time we got. Till next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it,